classical Chinese dance and music performance presented globally by Falun Gong community. Therefore, they call on the government of Canada to publicly seek the end of the persecution of Falun Gong, to impose sanctions against this regime related to the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, and to undertake stronger measures to protect victims here in Canada.
Well done, Your Honor.
Alors, on va malheureusement devoir.
I will unfortunately have to stop this here, and we will come back to presenting petitions after question period.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Oakville West.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the House referred Bill C-22 to the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. As a proud member of this committee, I am committed to strengthening public safety and ensuring that our law enforcement agencies have the tools they need to protect Canadians. I carry with me the voices of the residents of Oakville West who trust us to act decisively in the face of evolving threats, and that is exactly what we are delivering as a government. Bill C-22 is an important piece of legislation that will give law enforcement legal access to certain information or intercept communications used to support investigations into crimes and threats. Tonight, the Canadian Association of Chief of Police is hosting a reception to discuss the vital importance of this legislation. And I want to encourage all my fellow parliamentarians to attend who want to learn more about lawful access, to get informed and support Bill C-22. Let's give law enforcement the modern tools they need to keep our communities and Canadians safe. Thank you.
The honourable member for Barrie South, Innisfil.
This week, the International Association of Firefighters are holding their 33rd legislative conference in Ottawa. As a former firefighter and president of Markham Local 2727, I know the work IAFF members are doing this week, meeting with MPs from all parties, is critical to improving firefighter health and safety, as well as ensuring the financial security of Canadian firefighters, their families, and the families of members who've been lost in the line of duty either by accident or illness. Their advocacy reflects the same commitment to service they bring to their communities every day. As the Member of Parliament for Barrie South Innisfil, I want to thank both the Barrie and Innisfil Firefighters Association and their members, IAFF Locals 1753 and 3804, for the work they do in increasingly difficult circumstances and for their charitable fundraising, working to help those in need. Finally, to every IAFF firefighter in Ottawa this week and General President Ed Kelly, thank you for your service, your advocacy, your unwavering commitment to firefighter safety, and for looking out for our families.
The honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Go Bulldogs! The Brantford Bulldogs are off to the Eastern Conference Finals tomorrow after 8 straight playoff wins. They've had a historic season, leading the Eastern Conference into the playoffs with an impressive 106 points and 48 wins, finishing atop the league. Shift after shift, this team is working, skating, and playing hard. They're winning battles, lighting the lamp, and locking it down in their end. Back home in Brantford, you can feel it. The buzz in the arena, the roar of the crowd, and a community rallying behind every goal, hit, and save. This is playoff hockey at its best, and the Bulldogs are leading the charge. As a lifelong Brantford resident, I'm proud to be a longtime supporter of the team that brings our community together. To the players, coaches, and staff, keep your stick on the ice, keep grinding, and bring the heat to the Eastern Conference Finals. Brantford is behind you all the way, and we're ready to see that J. Ross Robertson Cup come home. Let's go, Bulldogs!
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface, St. Vital.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 30th anniversary of the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association. Founded through the vision and leadership of First Nation and Métis leaders, NACCA has built a national network of 51 Indigenous financial institutions, expanding access to capital for Indigenous entrepreneurs and serving every province and territory. In the 1990s, pioneering organizations such as the Alberta Indian Investment Corporation, Indian Business Corporation, the Saskatchewan Indian Equity Foundation, Société de Crédit Commercial Autochtone, Talayut Aboriginal Capital Corporation, and Ulnuweg Development Group laid the foundation for this movement. Last year, their work generated $377 million in labor income and over $640 million in GDP, while strengthening community well-being. Félicitations à NACC.
Congratulations to NACCA for 30 years of impact, leadership, and success. Thank you.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil.
As we recognize Daffodil Month, I rise to highlight the leadership of the Canadian Cancer Society and the many volunteers, patients, and caregivers who have come to Parliament Hill for their annual day of advocacy. For nearly half the people in Canada who are expected to be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, the Canadian Cancer Society is focused on saving lives, improving lives, and driving collective action against cancer. As part of their actions, volunteer advocates from across Canada are sharing their stories, highlighting the critical role clinical trials play in bringing new life-saving treatments to people with cancer and how important it is to remove barriers in accessing these trials.
The Canadian Cancer Society continues to fight for a clinical trial system which is stronger, more effective, and that puts patients first and speed up innovation while strengthening Canada's healthcare system and economy. I thank the Canadian Cancer Society for their dedication and hard work. They are building a future in which Canadians have faster, better access to cancer care.
Nora Kiwicking.
The Trans-Canada Highway is top of mind for the people of Northern Ontario, whether for safety, economic security, or nation building. During a 10-day stretch last winter, the region saw 5 collisions resulting in 8 fatalities, Mr. Speaker, and these types of accidents are far too common. It is also the only east-west corridor in the country. When the highway is delayed just 30 minutes, it costs the economy nearly $50,000. With more opportunities in mining, forestry, and nuclear, bringing more traffic to the region, this impact will only become greater. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister speaks often of protecting our economic security and developing nation-building projects. Despite this rhetoric, no new pipelines have been approved, mines aren't being permitted, and the national highway continues to be ignored. Improving the Trans-Canada in Northern Ontario is a win for all Canadians. It will strengthen our economy and protect our sovereignty. So, Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister is serious about nation-building projects, he should start in Northern Ontario.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honour the life of Tanis M. Richardson, a remarkable Winnipegger whose legacy of service enriched our country. Mrs. Richardson was gracious, caring, and deeply committed to others, dedicating her life to building a better community for all and inspiring others to do the same. She was a tireless volunteer and leader, supporting organizations like the United Way, the Kidney Foundation, and the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, and as a proud champion for the arts, played an important role establishing the Winnipeg Art Gallery. Her work with Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation and the creation of Manitoba's A Starry, Starry Night fundraiser made a tremendous difference in the lives of countless families. Her contributions were recognized nationally as she was appointed to the Order of Canada in 2003. Mrs. Richardson lived to be 99 years of age. In that time, she built a legacy defined by generosity and leadership. On behalf of the residents of Winnipeg South Centre, I extend my sincere condolences to her family and loved ones. May her memory be a blessing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Mr. Speaker, while there's much we may debate in this House, today I want to begin with what unites us, standing with Canadians affected by cancer. April is Daffodil Month, a time for us to show support for Canadians living with cancer, their families, and caregivers. As the co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Cancer Caucus, I want to thank the Canadian Cancer Society for its leadership and nonpartisan support. I also recognize my co-chair, the member for Vaudreuil, Senator Andrew Cardozo, and the patient advocates, researchers, and volunteers who make this work possible. Daffodil Month also reminds us why access to innovation matters. Clinical trials are often a last resort. They can be a lifeline. As journalist Don Martin recently shared, a clinical trial can quite literally mean the difference between life and death. Yet too many Canadians still face unnecessary delays. That is why the Canadian Cancer Society has set a big, achievable goal. No more than 75 days from a clinical trial registration to enrolling patients. This means more trials, more innovations, and more lives saved here in Canada. This is a goal we can achieve together. Let us support the work of the Canadian Cancer Society and give those facing a cancer diagnosis hope, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, April 22nd is Earth Day. In Quebec, The day is much more than just a celebration. It is a day of action. In 2012, over 250,000 people took to the streets all over Quebec. Quebecers, families, and young people stand up on Earth Day to protect the most valuable thing that we have, our planet. Their voices haven't disappeared, Mr. Speaker, but they are being ignored, just like the voices of the billions of people at risk because of the climate crisis. These voices are being ignored by governments which make other choices. Choices, for instance, influenced by nearly 1,000 meetings with oil and gas lobbyists in 2025. But we refuse to give up. Earth Day reminds us that change comes from commitment. We are fighting, and we will continue to fight against all odds to build a greener, fairer, and more compassionate world. And it's time for this government to come back down to earth because it's the only earth we have, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Waterloo.
Mr. Speaker, Team Dave is FRC Team 3683, the first robotics team at St. David Catholic Secondary School in Waterloo. Team Dave's participation in the first robotics competition is what gives the team its structure, intensity, and connection. But what stands out is how they balance their competitive drive with their culture of helping others. When asked, Team Dave shared that the most meaningful part of their season was supporting fellow teams across the Waterloo-Wellington First community. I've seen it. Team Dave showcases the best of Waterloo and Canada. Team Dave isn't just a team that builds robots. It's a competitive engineering program, a training ground for real-world problem solving, a node in a global robotics network, an environment that develops both soft and hard skills. In March, Team Dave won the Canadian Pacific Regionals in Vancouver, BC. Congratulations, Team Dave. We look forward to seeing what comes next, and a big thank you to the sponsors, mentors, parents, teachers, and supporters who never cease supporting Team Dave. Dave, happy Sweet 16. Bravo. Thank you.
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back home in Souris Moose Mountain, farmers will be in the field soon and are in the calving barns right now. Long days, short nights, doing what they do best, producing the food that Canadians rely on. But this year, like too many before it, they're doing it under the weight of rising costs. Costs driven up by this Liberal government. Yep. Fuel powers everything in agriculture: seeding, spraying, harvesting, and hauling. When taxes drive up the cost of diesel, they drive up the cost of food. It's just that simple. Canadians are already paying more at the pump, and Liberal taxes are making it worse, leaving us paying far more than our American neighbours. Now, Liberals are offering a temporary break on only one part of one tax for one part of 1 year. That's not relief. That's an illusion. Farmers can't plan a season on temporary measures, and families can't budget on half steps. Conservatives have a plan to remove these taxes in full, so farmers can produce and Canadians can afford to eat. Because when we support our farmers, we support families across Canada.
The honourable member for Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, in April, we wear daffodil as a symbol of hope for all those affected by cancer. Many families have been touched by cancer. Daffodil months bring Canadians together in that shared hope. Across the country, Canadian researchers are advancing new immune therapies and treatments. Let us recognize the nurses and doctors across Canada working hard to support patients every day. In Sunnybrook, Dr. Arjun Sahgal and his team are treating cancer patients with advanced radiation technologies. Dr. Helena McKay and her team is also improving cancer care with the new drug therapies. I want to recognize local organizations like Cancer Warriors, Walnut Foundation, and Terry Fox Foundation, and Canadian Cancer Society, along with the volunteers who are working hard on the ground. Let us continue the fight so that one day we can live in a world free of cancer, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Prime Minister warned at Davos, no more going along to get along. And then on April 10th, Canada went along and got along. Iran, designated as a state sponsor of terror, whose Revolutionary Guard is a listed terrorist entity in this country, was handed a UN seat shaping programs of women's rights and counterterrorism. Only one country objected, and it wasn't Canada. The government's silence on Iran is a vote cast in their favor, no matter what they tell you. This is a regime brutalizing women for not removing their hijab, running IRGC operatives in our streets, fundraising, organizing, and terrorizing our own people on our own soil. The Liberals have never had a single position on Iran, only whichever position costs the least. The record never lies. Delay and silence are a quiet ballot cast for the tyrants. Iran knows it, and because every time the Liberals are in the room, the tyrants keep winning.
The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I am proud to welcome to the gallery physicians from across Canada, part of the Canadian Medical Association.
As the member knows, we cannot point out those who are in the gallery, but the member may start from the beginning and omit that part.
Mr. Speaker, physicians from across Canada are here today as part of the Canadian Medical Association's Hill Day. My colleagues are here to deliver this message on behalf of their patients. Medicare is in trouble. We must fix it. I spent years as a physician, standing with patients in times of sorrow, joy, pain, birth, and death. It was a privilege and an honor. I saw what happens when a system stretched past its limits is held together only by the dedication of those who deliver care. Our doctors know what is needed to build a more efficient, effective, and equitable system. Meet with them. Listen to them. Let's end the toxic spread of health disinformation that erodes public trust and risks lives. Let's ensure access to care by all Canadians, especially the vulnerable and the stigmatized. I ask you today, colleagues, to salute doctors across the country who show up each day for their patients against all odds to deliver the care they need when they need it, regardless of where they live or their beliefs.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, after years of the Prime Minister's recycled speeches and empty promises, Canadians are still waiting for relief that never comes. There was nothing new in his latest message, just the same words, while costs rise and families fall further behind. In March, Canada again had the highest grocery price inflation in the G7. In Newfoundland and Labrador, families are paying more and getting less at the checkout and at the pumps. We are in an entrepreneurial drought, with 55% of small business owners not recommending starting a business. Why? Because this Prime Minister doubled down on deficits, printed money, and kept taxes high, driving up the cost of everything. No major resource projects, no plan to get our energy to market, fewer homes are being built, while young families wonder if they'll ever afford one. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians don't need another empty Liberal promise, they need results. Conservatives are fighting to end the waste, cut the taxes, unleash our resources, approve projects, and build homes so Canadians can once again afford to live, work, and raise a family.
The honourable member for Cumberland, Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, 6 years ago this past weekend, my community experienced unthinkable tragedy. 22 lives lost across Nova Scotia. They were neighbours, friends, family. These past 6 years have delivered much pain, sorrow, and confusion. But we have also witnessed extraordinary resilience, compassion, and solidarity. We have supported one another through the darkest of days and found strength together that we may not have known we possessed. We learned that grief does not have a finish line, but neither does love. So let us grieve, but not get lost in grief. And let us commit to working together toward the kind of community that honors every life lost. Thank you.
Oral questions, questions orales, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians should be able to fill up their grocery carts without emptying their wallets. But yesterday we learned that March, for the fourth consecutive month, has had the worst food inflation. All other G7 countries have the same global issues such as wars and tariffs. But here in Canada, under this Liberal Prime Minister, Canadians are seeing the fastest price hikes. On March 25th, the PM said that affordability affordability is at its best in a decade. Did he still believe that it's true? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on March 25th, I said that household affordability is at its highest in a decade. Second, in month of March again, Canadian salaries rose twice as high as the rate of inflation. And the economy is growing at the second fastest pace in the G7. That's not what he said, Mr. Speaker. He said that affordability was at its best in over a decade. And even if he did talk about rents, that wouldn't be true either. In 2015, rents cost roughly $970 for a one-bedroom. Now it's over $1,000 for the same. So the Prime Minister cannot solve a problem if he doesn't understand it. All Canadians who pay more for rent and food and other things know that he was wrong. Can he just admit that he made a mistake? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we measure affordability through prices and salaries. And salaries have continued to increase here in Canada at a pace that is double that of inflation. And rents are going down now here in Canada because of a greater supply of housing.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians should be able to fill their grocery carts without emptying their bank accounts. But yesterday, we learned that for the fourth month in a row, Canada had the highest food price inflation in the G7 under this Liberal Prime Minister. All the other G7 countries have the same tariffs and wars and other global factors as we do, but it is under this Prime Minister that Canadians are paying the most, the fastest. Yet he made a bizarre comment on March 25th where he said that affordability is the best it's been in over a decade. Families who are turning back items at the grocery checkout, young people who can't afford homes, know he's wrong. Will he admit that he was wrong?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the record is that every month that I've been Prime Minister, Canadian average wages have grown faster than the rate of inflation. Every month I've been Prime Minister, rents have fallen relative to wages. And you know what? There's more good news, Mr. Speaker, because on June 5th, over 12 million Canadians are going to receive the Groceries and Essentials benefit top-up. A boost today and a bridge to tomorrow.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he goofed. He stood on the floor of the House of Commons and claimed that it is now more affordable than at any time in a decade. The seniors who have to line up at food banks after those food bank lineups have doubled know he's wrong. The young people who are paying twice the rent that they would have paid a decade ago know he's wrong. The single mother who's paying 40% more for groceries and has to turn back items at the grocery checkout know he's wrong. Will he just stand up, admit he's human, that he made a mistake, that he goofed up, and that he got it wrong on affordability?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, housing rental affordability continues to improve. Asking rents have declined for 18 consecutive months. Every single month that this government has been in office, Canadian average salaries have increased. And now the IMF says that Canada will be the second strongest economy in the G7 this year and next. We are growing Canada strong. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he said that affordability is the best it's been in over a decade. A decade ago, the average one-bedroom rent was $970. Today, it's $1,850. Double. Incomes have not doubled. The young people who can't afford that rent know that he's wrong. The seniors choosing between eating and heating know that he's wrong. The Canadians paying 70% more for beef know that he's wrong. Will you stop quoting international bankers and realize that Canadians have never paid more and admit he was wrong.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, asking rents have declined year on year for the 18th consecutive month. Growth in housing expenses have increased at less than the Bank of Canada's target, marking the 16th straight month of annual declines. Salaries continue to grow at more than twice the rate of inflation. Affordability is improving, but this government is just getting started, and we won't stop.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians are hoping they do stop because they can't afford to pay one more penny. This Prime Minister is completely out of touch and Canadians are completely out of money. He thinks it's more affordable because his company puts its money in tax havens, so it's very affordable when you don't have to pay any tax. Meanwhile, the single mothers who are having to put their grocery items back, they understand that he's wrong to say affordability is better than ever before. The seniors who can't afford the doubling of rent under this Liberal government, they know he's wrong. Canadians know he's wrong. Will he stand up, admit that he goofed up, and that he was wrong on affordability?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to read into the record for the benefit of the Leader of the Opposition, I work for Canadians and only Canadians. I work for Canadians and only Canadians to improve their affordability. That's why we have the groceries and essential benefits, over $500 for 12 million Canadians June 5th. That's why we're cutting the federal tax on fuel. That's why we're providing Canadians, average family, with over $20,000 in benefit from child care to dental care, farmer care. Everything he voted against.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, for the past year, the Bloc has been insisting for trade talks with the U.S. to be our priority, but this does not seem to be the case given the government. Now, today, they have established an advisory committee for trade relations with the U.S., which may be in the interest of Quebec, but this committee under Trudeau did not have a great impact to date, and it sends a message once again that the government's priority is negotiation. In the meantime, can they establish measures for transitioning companies? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's a great honour to have the Advisory Committee for Canada-U.S. Trade, which includes the President of FTQ, the major Quebec union, and the head of the Aluminum Association, Mr. Seymour, including CEOs of major companies from Quebec and Canada. We already have the BEC trade deal with the U.S., but we're just getting started. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. You'd also be happy to have Ms. Picard on this committee, but I'd like to remind you that 3 weeks ago, the U.S. President said that tariffs would be higher for processing companies that use steel and aluminum, touching true companies and jobs. Will this be on the government's agenda? Will they have temporary measures for companies that are affected in the meantime before these negotiations are over? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the member opposite for his question. It's an important one. The new U.S. tariffs, the 232 tariffs, are global ones, and our government is considering temporary measures for the companies and individuals, including workers, who are affected. Thank you. Yes. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Prime Minister finally seems to be taking measures to have an impact and with respect to these U.S. tariffs on companies, because 85% of companies are under CUSMA, but it doesn't mean they're all doing well. That means there are many of them that aren't. So I'm looking forward to hear what these measures are, to see if they'll be in the economic update and if they've consulted us on this. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, obviously, we'll have to wait for the economic update on April 24th with our very great Minister of Finance, and there will be more good news for Canadians at that time with respect to our government strategy. We're building a strong, affordable, resilient, and more independent Canada from the U.S.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I gave the Prime Minister the chance to correct the record, and he refused to do so. On March 25th, he made an inaccurate comment. He claimed that affordability was the best that it had been in over a decade. Rent has doubled in that decade. The cost of food is up 40%. The cost of beef is up 70%. The cost of mortgages is up well over 60%. And every Canadian knows that he got it wrong. He can't possibly fix a problem if he doesn't know it exists. Exactly. So will he stand up today, admit that he got it wrong, and admit that life has never been more expensive for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, just moments ago, the Leader of the Opposition was talking about single mothers. And Mr. Speaker, what I'd like to say to all the single moms across the country is we've got your back. We've got your back with the Canada Child Benefit Payment that is indexed to inflation so that when the costs go up, so does your payment, something the Conservatives voted against. We've got your back when it comes to the cost of childcare, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that not only can you go to work, improve your skills, but you can actually pay for quality childcare while you do it. These guys vote against workers, they vote against moms, they vote against kids.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And now the Prime Minister has gone in the Witness Protection Program, Mr. Speaker. 70% of the time he doesn't even show up to answer questions, and then he refuses to stand up for affordability. He made the comment that affordability was the best it's been in over a decade. This after the number of people lined up at food banks has doubled. The rent has doubled. The cost of food is up 40%. We have the worst food price inflation in 40 years, and the Prime Minister cannot even stand in his place and debate me and answer the question, will he admit that he got it wrong on affordability like everything else?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's clear we hit a nerve today, didn't we? Because they know the truth, Mr. Speaker. Whether we're talking about investment in skilled trades workers, supporting workers when they are laid off due to tariffs or other issues related to that sector, Mr. Speaker, they vote against Canadians' interests. Whether it's $500, $1,800, $16,000, guess what, Mr. Speaker? Same pattern of behavior. They vote against the very Canadians they say they care about. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? Their actions prove exactly what side they're on an issue.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he goofed up. He goofed up. He stood up and claimed that Canadians have never had it so good, claiming that affordability is the best that it's been in over a decade, during which time housing costs have doubled, food bank lineups have doubled, Canadians cannot afford to eat. So why won't he have the courage to stand up, admit that he goofed up, and apologize to Canadians for the price he's making them pay?
The Honourable Secretary. Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Good answer, Wade. Mr. Speaker, that past Conservative leader, that current Conservative leader have 45 years
years' experience between the two of them have produced nothing. On this side of the House, our Prime Minister has been elected 1 year. Strongest projected economy in the G7. Second fastest growing economy in the G7. Best net to GDP in the G7. Wages are outpacing inflation. On this side of the House, we're serious about the economy. On that side, it's bluster and rhetoric. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what a sad sight it is when the Prime Minister cannot even stand to defend his own comments, and he claimed that life is more affordable than it's been in over a decade. He's been wrong on every major economic issue of our time. He was wrong to support the carbon tax, wrong to say that we should leave 50% of our oil and gas in the ground, wrong to oppose the pipeline to the Pacific, wrong about money printing, and now he's wrong to claim that Canadians are living a more affordable life than in a decade. Will he have the courage and stand up, admit he goofed up, and apologize to Canadians for telling them they never had it so good?
Let's save some for Wednesday. The Secretary of State for Sport.
Speaker, you know, the Leader Opposition wants Canadians to judge people by what they say in the House of Commons. You know, I kind of agree. He thought Brexit was a good idea. He said that marriage should be exclusively a bond between a man and a woman at the exclusion of all others. He also said that Canadians should opt out of inflation by buying crypto, Mr. Speaker. We have real solutions for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We have a tax cut for 22 million Canadians. We have the groceries and essentials benefit that'll help 12 million vulnerable Canadians with their grocery bills. How about a real solution for a change rather than this rhetoric?
You better stay here. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, just last week he was telling us that he wanted to lecture us all like students. Now he won't even get out of his chair and answer for his own words. He was the one who said that affordability is better than it's been in a decade, during which time the number of people lined up at food banks, working people, hard-working people, has doubled. The rent has doubled. Beef prices up 70%. And this Prime Minister has the audacity to look mothers who have to turn back items at the checkout of the grocery aisle and say they've never had it so good. Will the Prime Minister have a courage to look that woman in the eye?
We know there's no chanting in the House. That's unparliamentary. The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, it's a little early for cherry-picking season, but he's cherry-picking quotes, cherry-picking negative statistics to run down our country. As the Prime Minister said, Mr. Speaker, wages have grown twice as fast as the rate of inflation. We just took 10 cents off the price of a litre of gas, 28 cents since we took government. We've just given families up to $1,900 this year for the groceries and food essentials benefit. We are fighting for Canadians. They're running down the country and cherry-picking useless quotes.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was not for the artificially intelligent minister. It was for the Prime Minister.
Epithets are not permitted, and we have to treat all honourable members with respect. That doesn't mean we can't have hard-hitting questions, but no nicknames, please. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I goofed. I mixed up his title, Mr. Speaker. That's all I'm asking for the Prime Minister to do. He looked Canadians in the eyes. Canadians who are downgrading their diets, who are skipping meals so that their kids do not have to, and said that they've never had it so good, that affordability is the best that it's been in a decade. Anybody who spent 5 minutes studying the economic facts would know that food bank lineups have doubled, rent has doubled, the cost of everything is going up precisely because of his inflationary liberal policies. Will he have the courage to stand up, own up, and admit that he goofed up?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
He is often mining for clips, as we know. Today, more often than usual, I wonder why. He might be nervous about something, Mr. Speaker. The champion of Brexit, the guy that wanted to cut the pensions of seniors, he talked about being out of touch. He stood in front of the home of a waitress and called it a shack. On this side of the House of Commons, we'll be sincere, we'll be hardworking, we'll stand by our communities and our constituents, we'll put in place the foundations for the Canadian economy in the present and the future. That's exactly what we'll do.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister owes Canadians an explanation. They're living with the worst in housing costs, the worst food costs in Canadian history. They're living with the worst food price inflation in the G7, the worst household debt in the G7, the worst housing costs in the G7, the fastest shrinking economy in the G7, breaking every single promise that this Prime Minister made. Why won't he have the courage to stand up and answer the question, admit that he was wrong about affordability, and admit he'll reverse course so Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition owes Canadians an explanation because when he goofed up and he lost his seat, Canadians spent $2.3 million of taxpayer money, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, what we're doing, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House to support women is through the National School Food Program. We are feeding 400.
We'll just wait till it gets a little quieter because the chair can't hear. And if the chair can't hear, the chair doesn't know if rules have been broken. So, well, not from the top, but the member may continue, and we'll have a bit of leeway. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of women, that Leader of the Opposition, let's not forget, embedded misogynistic hashtags in his YouTube channel because of promoting men who hate women, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're promoting the National School Food Program, which is feeding 400,000 kids across the country. We've made this program permanent.
The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, far too many veterans suffer from mental health issues. To help them, Ottawa has created a program called the PSRVC, the Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services Partners, but it doesn't help, it hurts. A survey of 51 mental health professionals shows that the PSRVC worsens veterans' conditions. They are subject to misdiagnoses by unqualified staff. Worse still, if they boycott the program, Ottawa threatens to cut their benefits. Do veterans deserve to be treated this way?
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, supporting veterans in their rehabilitation journey is a top priority. While many veterans are seeing positive results in their overall well-being, we know that there are still many that we can continue to help. That's why I've directed my department to launch an independent review of the rehabilitation program. The goal is to identify where the program is working well and where it can be strengthened so that we can continue to support the outcomes and better support veterans through this transition.
The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, veterans who are suffering are forced to participate in the program under threat from Ottawa, even when it worsens their symptoms. They are mired and... I'm sorry? I'm not sure. You can hear in your earpieces. I don't hear anything. Can you start again, please, from the top? Mr. Speaker, veterans who are suffering are forced to participate in the PSRVC, even when it worsens their symptoms, they are mired in a bureaucracy that is harmful to them, and they are repeatedly confronted with their traumas by poorly trained therapists who contradict the advice of health professionals. And yet, Ottawa is considering extending the program for another 6 years without an effective evaluation. Before proceeding, Mr. Speaker, will the minister launch an independent investigation into the human consequences of this program?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our top priority will always be ensuring that veterans receive improved support, service, and rehabilitation outcomes through the rehabilitation program. Since its launch in 2021, the program has expanded to over 15,000 service providers and has supported more than 23,000 veterans. We recognize that there are always opportunities to improve. I've just said that we are going to be undertaking an independent review, and we will continue to put the care of veterans at the forefront of the work that we're doing.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, this weekend the Prime Minister described our trade relations with the U.S. as a weakness. Same thing as the Liberal policy that makes Canadians' lives much more expensive. And Liberals might have taken 10 cents off the price of gas, but it's still 30 cents more for citizens. When will this Liberal government suspend all taxes on gas? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud that since Monday, Quebecers pay 10 cents less a litre in Quebec, and across Canada, this is immediate support. But we're not stopping here. We also have the CCB. I'll just give you an idea. They're voting against many thousands of children that will be helped, including many in his riding, and also the dental care program that will help many people in the Beauce. Over 28,000 of them have access to a dentist now, and they can't stand up and say that they want to defend everyone when they vote against this. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Inflation costs a lot, and so does the gas, and Liberal math costs so much. The Liberals announced a 4-cent per litre discount on diesel, but this affects thousands of products, and it's 11/100ths of a cent per product. So this doesn't make sense. Will the Liberals adopt our plan and suspend all taxes on gas? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The fundamental difference between what they're doing on that side of the House and what we are is that they have no vision for the Canadian economy. We have immediate support, yes, with the freezing of the excise tax. We have grocery benefits, dental care, the CCB, and this is immediate support. And what we have is a bridge to the future. It's uniting the Canadian economy, and we're having with big projects such as the graphite project. We're talking about trade corridors, trade deals that we're signing. That's what our economic vision is on this side of the House. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister kept saying that affordability has never been so good in over a decade. And it seems that the Brookfield elite don't go grocery shopping very often. And over the past decade, the food prices have gone up 42%, and potatoes up 60%, and beef has risen by 69%. These are facts, and the list is long. Can the Prime Minister take responsibility for the Liberals' poor track record and stop lecturing Canadians? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, it's important to walk and chew gum at the same time and to do other things. We have to be able to work on all different fronts. We are working on the gas tax. We are working on essential needs. And we're also working a lot, because that's what's important in the long term. It's giving long-term purchasing power to Canadians. We are working on our economy. We're creating jobs. We are bringing trade back. We're becoming independent. That's what we have to do. Walk and chew gum at the same time and work for Canadians. And that's what we're doing.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, we know that the Liberals love chewing gum without doing much else. Yesterday, data confirmed that Canada is the worst performer when it comes to food inflation, with the highest rate in the G7. And Canadians are miserable under Liberal rule. We've fallen from 5th to 25th in the global happiness rankings. Mr. Speaker, even without any form of track record, the Liberals are outdoing themselves in arrogance. When will this Prime Minister stop peddling illusions and finally deliver results for Canadians, all Canadians? The Honourable Secretary of State. Well, the member knows I don't chew gum myself, but in any case, thank you. But I don't doubt that the Conservatives understand that we are working for everyone when we work for children, when we work for seniors, when we work on groceries and essential goods. We, through this, work for all Canadians. And that's what's important. We work for all Canadians. And that's what we're doing on this side of the House every single day. But unfortunately, strategics that will help our economy, that will help us on our independence and that are sustainable are blocked by the opposition. The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katascomique, Témiscouata. Cutting 10 cents off the price of gas right now is like trying to put out a forest fire with a glass of water. Canadians need much more relief than 10 cents a litre. And the Liberals asked us for good ideas. Well, removing all taxes on fuel by the end of the year would have been a relief measure for families, businesses and farmers. This, not only in my riding, Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katascomique, Témiscouata, but for all Quebecers and Canadians. When will the Liberals finally listen to us and remove the 25 cents on a litre of gas? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, let's just look at the facts for once. Let's just look at the facts. If they're aware of what a fact is. I'll explain to them what facts are. There is a war happening. There's a war. The price of crude has gone from $60 a barrel to close to $100. And the impact of that is an increase in the price of gas. It's not Liberal taxes that did this. It's the international context. What we are doing is what we can do, is bringing relief to Canadian taxpayers.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre.
When folks in my riding of Hamilton Centre go to the gas station to fill up gas, they will notice a difference at the pump. Yesterday, the temporary suspension of the federal fuel excise tax came into effect, saving the average Canadian family 10 cents per litre on regular gasoline. This is just one way Canada's new government is making life more affordable. Can the Secretary of State update us on this and other measures designed to put more money in the pockets of Canadians?
Good question.
State for financial institutions.
Speaker, I want to thank that member from Hamilton Centre for the great work he's doing in this House and in his riding. And yes, if Canadians go fill up right now, they're going to save 10 cents a litre. That's right. Last week, we paused the federal excise tax on fuel. You add the cut to the consumer carbon tax of 18 cents. That is a 28-cent savings when Canadians fill up. On this side of the House, we're going to continue to be focused on building the strongest economy in the G7. It's time for the Conservative Party to join us, build a strong Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done. The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington, Tyendinaga.
There is only 10 weeks left until the Kuzma review, and there is still no plan by this Prime Minister. Reports suggest there have been no serious negotiations with D.C. since October, while Mexico is actively engaged in informal Kuzma talks with the U.S. Mr. Speaker, we are at a critical juncture for North American trade, and I raise a very straightforward concern. 2.6 million Canadian jobs depend on this negotiation. They need certainty. They need predictability. Why is Canada not actively at the table?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. economic relations, trade.
Speaker, I want to begin by thanking our colleague for that important question. It won't surprise you, Mr. Speaker, that the premise of the question that Canada is not actively engaged with the United States or at a negotiating table is not accurate. I have had a number of conversations on a weekly basis with senior members of the American administration. The Prime Minister, of course, is also communicating directly with President Trump. Our chief negotiator, Madame Charette, Ambassador Wiseman, are also having conversations. Mr. Speaker, we're doing the important work that Canadians expect us to do, but we're also focusing on what we can control here at home.
The honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington Town, Tyendinaga.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister was elected on the promise of being able to negotiate a deal with the United States. He has not delivered, and instead he's walking away with 76% of our exports bound for the U.S. That reality will not change quickly, and certainly not for Canadians already bearing the cost of tariffs. Diversification takes time indeed, especially when negotiations yield no results. When will this Liberal government commit to prioritizing Canada-U.S. trade, return to Washington, and secure a deal with a nation that we trade nearly $1 trillion a year with? What's the plan?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the question gives me an opportunity to share the good news with all members of this House that this morning the Prime Minister announced an important advisory council of women and men representing businesses, elected union leaders, community leaders. In fact, the former leader of the Conservative Party, the former Premier of Quebec, the former Premier of Nunavut, former Minister of Public Safety in this House. But, Mr. Speaker, business leaders, union leaders, representatives of associations are working with this government to make sure that we have a deal for Canadian workers.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Reuters reports that Mexican President Sheinbaum is eyeing an early deal ahead of the completion of the review of CUSMA, an early deal on autos, aluminum, and steel. Is the government working in coordination with Mexico to secure an early deal on autos, aluminum, and steel? And if not, why not?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, to thank our colleague for that important question. Of course, we're working with our Mexican counterparts as we do the work necessary to prepare for the CUSMA review. I am in regular contact with Economy Secretary Ebrard. The Prime Minister, of course, talks to President Sheinbaum. The good news, Mr. Speaker, is Secretary Ebrard will be in Canada with an important delegation of Mexican business leaders, a return of the successful visit we did. We will continue those conversations with the Mexicans and the Americans to ensure that we get the best deal for Canadian workers and Canadian businesses.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Mexico is clearly at the negotiating table and providing formal updates. Yesterday, President Sheinbaum and USTR Greer formally met in Mexico City. The joint statement said that Mexico and the U.S. will hold talks this week on resolving trade irritants, and that Mexico and the United States will begin the first official negotiating round for the review of CUSMA the week of May 25th. When will talks between Canada and the U.S. take place to resolve irritants, and when will the first official Canada-U.S. negotiating round for the review of CUSMA take place?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, yes, of course, the U.S. is an important trading partner, but also there are many trading partners around the world that we're engaging with. We signed a trade agreement with Indonesia, destined to be the 5th largest economy in the world, overtaking Germany. The UAE investment agreement, which brought back $70 billion of investments to this country. Of course, we have Ecuador, but also what we're doing with the European Union, Mr. Speaker. Our defense exporters have asked us to unlock opportunities, and that agreement alone has unlocked hundreds of millions of dollars of opportunities for our defense export community. This is what it takes to unlock jobs in Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, on April 2nd, the United States announced substantial changes to how they collect steel and aluminum tariffs. Now applied to full value products, this change will result in higher costs for Canadian manufacturers and reduce business activity across this country. Workers and businesses are looking for leadership, but instead they're getting silence. Was the Prime Minister aware of these changes, and what is he doing to have these tariffs removed?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, U.S. trade relationship remains key, and that's why this government is working hard every day to make sure we get the best possible deal, and not just any deal. At the same time, we're supporting trade diversification. In the last year, our exports to Europe are up 31%. Our FDI is at an 18-year high, foreign direct investment. And we're working very attentively at the industry committee. We're working very attentively to listen to what the steel and the mold makers are telling us, and we'll be there with the supports that are needed.
Honourable member for Prince Albert.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are being left in the dark on CUSMA review. We are forced to rely on media reports, the occasional committee appearance, hearing a vague talk of challenges faced. My constituents are calling me, concerned for their families and their businesses as resolution to these disputes continue to grind on. In fact, many of us know more about the status of the U.S.-Mexico negotiations than that of our own country. When will this Prime Minister provide a clear update to this House on the deal that he promised to secure over a year ago?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, on this side of the House, we're controlling what we can control. We can't control what is happening on the other side, but we are in regular contact both with U.S. administration officials and with the companies, with the steel makers, the mold makers, the aluminum providers, all those companies that are key to this trade relationship, not just with the U.S., but increasingly across the world, and we'll continue to be in regular contact. We will be there to support this sector.
Very good. The Honourable Member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that Mexico is anticipating a deal on auto, steel, and aluminum. In fact, Mexico and the United States have been at the negotiating table having ongoing formal and substantive discussions. But here, there are reports that there have been no substantial and ongoing formal discussions between Canada and the United States since October. So why is it again that Mexico seems to be at the table with the United States and Canada is on the outside looking in?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, as the Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade has indicated, our talks with the United States continue as they do with Mexico. And in the meantime, we will continue to diversify our trade relationships. Over a dozen new deals signed in the past 6 months, Mr. Speaker, combined with FDI, foreign direct investment. Mr. Speaker, we are also looking to conclude additional FTAs this year, including with the ASEAN in 2026, looking ahead to Mercosur. Mr. Speaker, we can control our own destiny, and we are doing that by diversifying our...
L'honorable député de Charlesbourg.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. The Prime Minister was elected on a single promise to negotiate a victory with the US President and reach an agreement on the 21st of July 2025. But no victory, no agreement so far, and US tariffs on Canadian goods have doubled. The results of this incompetence? Hundreds of Quebec businesses are losing millions of dollars due to US tariffs. Meanwhile, the Liberal government is spending billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to prop up an economy it cannot protect. Why should Canadian families have to foot the bill for Liberal incompetence? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, our colleague knows full well we have the best agreement with the States than any other trade partner. However, we do recognise that unjustified tariffs applied throughout the world, like the Prime Minister mentioned in his answers, deserve a response from Canada and the provinces in order to support workers and the industry. I'm surprised that my Conservative colleague doesn't believe that we should be here for Canadian workers. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. I'm not the one who said it. Last year it was the Prime Minister himself who said that he could negotiate an agreement and rectify all issues with Donald Trump. But there are no solutions. Even worse, for the last 5 months, there have been no negotiations with Americans. Nothing is moving forward. Mexico is moving forward. Other countries have agreements. Canada has nothing. But taxpayer money is being used to compensate. Companies are suffering. They don't want checks here and there. They want to actually survive. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I don't think there was a question in what my colleague said, so it gives me the opportunity to remind the House the great news that the Prime Minister announced this morning. We have implemented a new advisory committee with representatives from Labour, like Ms. Picard, from the Federation of Quebec Workers, the CEO of AgroPure, of Domtar, which is a big forestry company. These are Quebec business people. And we have business people from coast to coast to coast, those who want to work with our government because we're here for industry. The Honourable Member for Orléans. Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Veteran Affairs Committee and proud member for Orléans, I often hear about the need to strengthen the Canadian Armed Forces to meet the challenges ahead. Our new government has embarked on an ambitious plan to rebuild, reinvest in and re-equip our armed forces. Can a Minister for National Defence provide an update on this important plan? The Honourable Minister for National Defence. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Orleans for her question. Indeed, we have some important news for Canada and the Canadian Armed Forces. Recruitment has reached its highest level in 30 years. Here are the facts. Over the past year, the number of applications has more than doubled to over 45,000. We have recruited 7,310 regular force members, thereby exceeding our targets. And 70 of the 97 critical positions have been filled. Mr. Speaker, we are working hard, but we've only just begun.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday at committee, the Auditor General revealed multiple situations where the Immigration Department failed to investigate or even detect significant cases of fraud. At the same meeting, the Deputy Minister of Immigration pled ignorance on the topic, saying, "Fourth week on the job, so I can't answer that question." In fact, for 2 straight hours, he had zero answers as to why the Auditor General found over 153,000 cases of immigration fraud, yet his department only investigated 2%. The Prime Minister said the system was under control, but like everything else, that was an illusion. Simple question, why has this Immigration Minister lost control?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
A 60% decline in the number of international students coming to Canada. A 1/3 decline in those claiming asylum. We are restoring control and integrity in the immigration system. There's a number of other examples I could provide, but for the benefit of the member, who's an honourable member and a good colleague on the Immigration Committee, he knows very well that's not what the deputy said. He's cutting off his comments, in fact. He said very clearly that the recommendations of the Auditor General are taken into account. Data systems are being put in place to ensure greater integrity. We'll continue that work.
Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Last week, a Quebec judge called out the rampant practice of prosecutors and judges arranging lenient sentences for non-citizens convicted of serious crimes in Canada in order to shield them from deportation. The reality is that many victims are suffering after non-citizens convicted of serious crimes in Canada are getting sweetheart deals so that they don't have to face the consequences already set out in Canadian immigration law. Yet the Liberals voted against my bill that would have ended this practice. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, it's important that when people commit serious crimes, they face serious penalties. That's why we are moving forward with some of the most serious reforms when it comes to Canada's criminal laws in generations. As the member knows, Mr. Speaker, there is no rule that requires judges to reduce penalties for people based on their immigration status. We want to ensure courts have the ability to make judgments that consider all of the facts of a given case, and when serious crimes are committed, serious penalties will result. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I would love for the minister to say that to a woman whose non-citizen's ex-boyfriend choked her and assaulted her so badly that she's terrified to leave her house even for grocery shopping. Yet her attacker argued that he should get a light sentence so that he wouldn't be deported. And last week, Mr. Speaker, we found out that the judge agreed with the criminal. It's disgusting. Wow. This isn't a system that's under control, and it's not a system that provides justice for victims. The Liberals, in fact, are supporting a two-tier justice system that undermines the safety of everybody and the credibility of our immigration.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, when violent criminals are convicted of serious crimes, they must face serious penalties. That includes, Mr. Speaker, in the immigration system, the risk of deportation after a conviction for a serious crime has taken place. There is not a rule, as some have suggested in this chamber, that requires judges to give lighter sentences for people based on their immigration status. We need to ensure that the justice system operates with integrity, and that includes the ability of the court to consider all of the facts that are before the court when making a decision as to an appropriate sentence. Rest assured, Mr. Speaker, we support serious penalties for violent offences in all circumstances.
The honourable member for Mississauga-Malton.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday C-22 was referred to committee. This is important legislation in our digital age. It gives law enforcement exactly the tools that they've asked for, and our government's work is closely aligned with many child protection organizations, like Peel Children's Aid Society in my own very riding. Can the Minister of Public Safety please elaborate on what the movement of this bill means to keeping our communities safe?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the member from Mississauga-Malton for the very important question, and let me thank law enforcement across Canada for the work that they've been doing in ensuring that lawful access measures become law in Canada. I want to assure all members in this House that we're working together to pass swift passage of Bill C-22 lawful access. Today, Mr. Speaker, chiefs of police and police leaders are gathering in Ottawa under the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police to educate lawmakers on the need for lawful access, and I invite all members to join us this evening.
The honourable member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
The Prime Minister wants to talk about our country's weakness. The only weakness I see is his broken promise to Canadians in not getting a tariff deal. A new 25% tariff was put on the entire value of goods made with steel, aluminum, and copper. This is devastating news for the thousands of workers in Stony Creek's industrial corridor and the 2.6 million Canadians that rely on U.S. trade for their jobs. It's been 1 year. When will the Prime Minister stop the illusions and get the tariff deal that he promised Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hamilton has a proud history of steel making, and there's a proud sector there of steel, mold making, supporting the broader sector of Southern Ontario manufacturing. You know, on this side of the House, we're controlling what we can control, which means to expand trade to places where we have previously not been doing as much trade, establishing new trade agreements, supporting those mold makers, those steel manufacturers and others with supports, with tariff relief, and with the opportunities to move beyond that. And we know that we will be in regular dialogue with these members of this community so that we can have their backs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Canadians are being crushed by the cost of living, and now gas prices are skyrocketing. But not everyone is suffering. Oil companies will rake in an extra $90 billion this year from Donald Trump's illegal war on Iran. And what's the Liberal response? A tax cut that oil companies will simply pocket by raising prices. Instead of handing more money to oil giants, why doesn't this government cap gas prices, tax windfall profits, and use those funds to give people real relief?
The Ministre des Finances.
I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. It's in fact an important question. Mr. Speaker, you will be happy to say that yesterday, in fact, the suspension of the fuel excise tax federal, Mr. Speaker, came into force until Labor Day. But to his point, Mr. Speaker, you will remember that in last year we gave additional power to the Competition Bureau to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that they will have the tool and the enforcement capacity to make sure that we have more competition in this country. We all understand that more competition usually leads to more choice for consumer and better price for consumer, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Vancouver East.
Well, the high cost of living is fueled by greedflation, and the Liberals know it. The top 1% now holds nearly a quarter of all wealth, while the bottom 40% scrape by with just over 3%. Oil companies are on track to make $90 billion in windfall profits from Trump's illegal war. Half measures like a temporary federal gas tax suspension will not stop this gross inequality. Will the Prime Minister bring in a windfall profit tax and price caps on gas to stop oil companies from price gouging Canadians? Yes or no?
L'honorable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member. That's a very important question, and I'm sure all members of this House are interested by the matter. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, we're doing our part on the federal side. Last year, she would have seen that we gave additional power to the Competition Bureau to make sure that they can investigate, that they would have enforcement tool, and we will continue, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that there's more tool in the toolbox of all the enforcement agency to make sure there's more competition and always better price for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Je voudrais signaler aux députés la présence à la tribune.
I'd like to inform you of the presence of Christian Mbadou Fansu, Minister of La Francophonie and the Congolese Diaspora of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I don't see any. It being 3:14, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion to concur in the 7th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Call in the members. The question is as follows. Mr. Jenis, seconded by Mrs. Jansen, moved that the 7th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities presented on Wednesday, March 11, 2026, be concurred in. La période de 10 minutes pour...
The 10-minute period for members voting electronically has started, and the House will now proceed to the vote for members participating in person. All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Brock.
Mr. Brock.
Mr. Bazan.
Mr. Bazan.
Mrs. Bloch.
Mrs. Bloch.
Mrs. Thomas.
Mrs. Thomas.
Mr. Dentel.
Mr. Dentel.
Mr. Paulus.
Mr. Paulus.
Mr. Halan.
Mr. Halan.
Ms. Lewis Haldeman Norfolk.
Ms. Lewis Haldeman Norfolk.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Seaback.
Mr. Seaback.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Jenis.
Mr. Jenis.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Beltud.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Ellis. Mr. Ross.
Mr. Ross.
Mr. Godin.
Mr. Godin.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Genereux.
Mr. Genereux.
Mr. Gould.
Mr. Gould.
Mr. Steinley.
Mr. Steinley.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Lobb.
Mr. Lobb.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Muse.
Mr. Muse.
Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Ho.
Mr. Ho.
Mrs. Falk, Battleford, Lloydminster, Meadow Lake.
Mrs. Falk, Battleford, Lloydminster, Meadow Lake.
Mr. Halsey.
Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Bragdon.
Mr. Bragdon.
Monsieur Mallette, Kapuskasing, Timmins, Mushkegowuk.
Mr. Mallette, Kapuskasing, Timmins, Mushkegowuk.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mr. Diot.
Mr. Diot.
Mr. Williamson.
Mr. Williamson.
Mr. Epp.
Mr. Epp.
Mr. Macaulay.
Mr. Macaulay.
Mr. Menegakis.
Mr. Menegakis.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mrs. Jansen.
Mrs. Jansen.
Mr. Abu Taif.
Mr. Abu Taif.
Mr. Motz.
Mr. Motz.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Cram.
Mr. Cram.
Mr. McLean, Calgary Center.
Mr. McLean, Calgary Center.
Mr. Tolmie.
Mr. Tolmie.
Mr. Patzer.
Mr. Patzer.
Mr. Groslo.
Monsieur Groslo.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mrs. Anstey.
Mrs. Anstey.
Mr. Au.
Mr. Au.
Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Bélanger, Sudbury S, Manitoulin, Nickel Belt.
Monsieur Bélanger, Sudbury S, Manitoulin, Nickel Belt.
Mr. Bexty.
Mr. Bexty.
Mr. Bonk.
Mr. Bonk.
Mrs. Kobania.
Mrs. Kobania.
Mrs. Cody.
Mrs. Cody.
Mr. Davies, Niagara South.
Mr. Davies, Niagara South.
Mr. Dawson.
Mr. Dawson.
Mrs. DeRitter.
Mrs. DeRitter.
Mr. Gill, Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Gill, Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Gill, Brampton West.
Mr. Gill, Brampton West.
Mr. Gill, Calgary McKnight.
Mr. Gill, Calgary McKnight.
Mr. Gill, Windsor West.
Mr. Gill, Windsor West.
Mr. Leslie.
Mr. Leslie.
Mr. Kmitch.
Mr. Kmitch.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Guglielmin.
Mr. Guglielmin.
Mr. Holman.
Mr. Holman.
Mr. Kibble.
Mr. Kibble.
Mrs. Conans.
Mrs. Conans.
Ms. Cronus.
Ms. Cronus.
Mr. Curick.
Mr. Curick.
Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Rowe.
Mr. Rowe.
Mr. Stevenson.
Mr. Stevenson.
Monsieur Garon.
Monsieur Garon.
Monsieur Simard.
Monsieur Simard.
Monsieur Fortin.
Monsieur Fortin.
Monsieur Champoux.
Monsieur Champoux.
Monsieur Perron.
Monsieur Perron.
Monsieur Deschaines.
Monsieur Deschaines.
Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.
Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Madame Larouche.
Madame Larouche.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Monsieur Barcelot-Duval.
Monsieur Barcelot-Duval.
Monsieur Blanchette-Jonca.
Monsieur Blanchette-Jonca.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent.
All those opposed to the motion will please rise.
Mr. Ali.
Mr. Ali.
Mr. McDonald-Malpeck.
Mr. McDonald-Malpeck.
Mr. McGuinty.
Mr. McGuinty.
Madame Michel.
Madame Michel.
Mr. Fraser.
Mr. Fraser.
Mr. Solomon.
Mr. Solomon.
Mrs. Valdez.
Mrs. Valdez.
Mr. Duclos.
Mr. Duclos.
Ms. Gould.
Ms. Gould.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Ms. Jacek.
Ms. Jazik.
Mr. Osborne.
Mr. Osborne.
Mr. Fragaskatos.
Mr. Fragaskatos.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Ms. Gainey.
Ms. Gainey.
Madame Provost.
Madame Provost.
Ms. Sahota.
Ms. Sahota.
Mr. Belanger, Desnethi, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Belanger, Desanethi, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Garrettson.
Mr. Garrettson.
Ms. Anand.
Ms. Anand.
Ms. Alty.
Ms. Alty.
Mr. Sarai.
Mr. Sarai.
Ms. McLean, Esquimalt, Saanich Suk.
Ms. McLean, Esquimalt, Saanich Suk.
Madame Chanette.
Madame Chanette.
Ms. Latanzio.
Ms. Latanzio.
Madame Maynard.
Madame Maynard.
Ms. Scrow.
Ms. Scrow.
Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Dollywall.
Mr. Dollywall.
Mr. Biddle.
Mr. Biddle.
Madame Châtel.
Madame Châtel.
Mr. Grant.
Mr. Grant.
Madame Kayabaga.
Madame Kaibaga.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Madame Brière.
Madame Brière.
Mr. Turnbull.
Mr. Turnbull.
Mr. Kellaway.
Mr. Kellaway.
Monsieur Gay.
Monsieur Gay.
Mr. Hogan.
Mr. Hogan.
Madame Koutrakis.
Madame Koutrakis.
Ms. Chi.
Ms. Chi.
Mr. Miles.
Mr. Miles.
Ms. Zerowitz.
Ms. Zerowitz.
Monsieur Elkoury.
Monsieur El Khoury.
Monsieur Fergus.
Monsieur Fergus.
Ms. Gladue.
Ms. Gladue.
Ms. Suds.
Ms. Suds.
Madame Desrochers.
Madame Desrochers.
Mrs. McKelvey.
Mrs. McKelvey.
Mr. Gasparo.
Mr. Gasparo.
Mr. Hanley.
Mr. Hanley.
Madame Rochefort.
Madame Rochefort.
Mr. Casey.
Mr. Casey.
Madame Bendayen.
Madame Bendayen.
Mr. Oliphant.
Mr. Oliphant.
Mr. Clausen.
Mr. Clausen.
Madame Lavac.
Madame Lavac.
Monsieur Ramsey.
Mr. Ramsey.
Ms. Church.
Ms. Church.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Morrissey.
Ms. Cedar Brampton South.
Ms. Cedar Brampton South.
Ms. Vandenbelt.
Ms. Vanderbilt.
Mrs. Zaid.
Mrs. Zaid.
Ms. Yip.
Ms. Yip.
Monsieur d'Entremont.
Monsieur d'Entremont.
Madame Lalonde.
Madame Lalonde.
Mr. Ailfson.
Mr. Ailfson.
Madame Lapointe, Rivière des Mille-Îles.
Madame Lapointe, Rivière des Mille-Îles.
Mr. Baines.
Mr. Baines.
Ms. Hefner.
Miss Hefner.
Ms. Idlout.
Miss Idlout.
Madame Lapointe Sudbury.
Madame Lapointe Sudbury.
Mr. Carr.
Mr. Carr.
Ms. Akan.
Ms. Akan.
Mr. Al Saoud.
Mr. Al Saoud.
Mr. Chang.
Mr. Chang.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark.
Madame Dondurant.
Madame Dondurant.
Mr. Danko.
Mr. Danko.
Mr. Deschênes-Thériault.
Mr. Deschênes-Thériault.
Mr. Earl.
Mr. Earl.
Ms. Fancy.
Miss Fancy.
Mr. Fanjoy.
Mr. Fanjoy.
Ms. Harrison.
Miss Harrison.
Ms. Hurtle.
Miss Hurtle.
Monsieur Joseph.
Monsieur Joseph.
Monsieur Lavoie.
Monsieur Lavoie.
Mr. Ma.
Mr. Ma.
Mr. McDonald Cardigan.
Mr. McDonald Cardigan.
Mr. Mallette Bay of Quinty.
Mr. Mallette Bay of Quinty.
Ms. Miedema.
Miss Miedema.
Madame Mingarelli.
Madame Mingarelli.
Ms. Nathan.
Ms. Nathan.
Ms. O'Rourke.
Miss O'Rourke.
Mr. Rana.
Mr. Rana.
Ms. Royer.
Miss Roy.
Mr. Saini.
Mr. Saini.
Mr. Sahi.
Mr. Sari.
Mr. Sawatsky.
Mr. Sawatsky.
Ms. Sodi.
Miss Sodi.
Mr. St. Pierre.
Mr. St. Pierre.
Ms. Tesser Dirksen.
Miss Tesser Dirksen.
Mr. Villeneuve.
Mr. Villeneuve.
Mr. Watchhorn.
Mr. Watchhorn.
Ms. McPherson.
Ms. McPherson.
La Chambre attend.
The House will now wait for the electronic voting period to end before resuming its proceedings. I wish to inform the House that the electronic voting period has now ended. If members were not able to vote due to technical difficulties, they may now use the raised hand function and the chair will recognize them. Seeing no raised hands, I would ask the table to now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 152, 152. Nays contre 165, 165.
I declare the motion defeated.
Yes. The Honourable Minister. I'm sorry, I can't hear the Minister.
My telephone app did not work.
I guess the member is asking for unanimous consent to consider her vote. Okay. Those opposed to the Honourable Minister moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed. So the Honourable Member voted which way?
It's nay, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All good. All good. Okay. I'm now prepared to rule on the point of order raised on April 17th, 2026 by the Deputy House Leader of the Government in the House of Commons regarding the admissibility of amendments adopted by the Standing Committee on National Defence to Bill C-11, an act to amend the National Defence Act and other acts. The member contended that during clause-by-clause consideration of the bill, 6 amendments, CPC 1, 10, CPC 1 and CPC 10, BQ 2, CPC 16, NDP 4, and BQ 3 were adopted by the committee after having been ruled inadmissible by the chair. The member requested that the Speaker review the content of the bill as amended and determine whether the 6 amendments in question exceed the scope and principle of the bill as determined by the House at second reading. The member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman argued that the 6 amendments in question are consistent with the principle and scope of the bill. He claimed that CPC 1 fixes an unintended omission from the bill and that the mention of the Judge Advocate General in the bill's summary demonstrates the importance of the position. With respect to CPC 16, BQ 2, and NDP 4, he argued that these amendments had the support of all committee members. He contended that BQ 3 both increases the pool of potential military judges, something already contemplated in the bill, and would result in judges released from the forces, which he argued is consistent with the principle of enhancing the independence of the military justice system. Finally, he argued that CPC 10, by providing for the appointment of a liaison officer for the accused, makes a change consistent with the bill's proposal concerning a victim's liaison officer.
The member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot-Acton also intervened on the matter. He argued that amendments BQ2 and BQ3 should not have been ruled inadmissible by the chair. Regarding BQ2, the member maintained that it merely requires the government to table a plan to study the creation of an Inspector General on sexual misconduct without creating a position or requiring new spending, and was supported by expert testimony and unanimously adopted in committee. As for BQ3, the member argued it was not meant to correct an omission from the bill or introduced by the government. It was namely to strengthen the independence of military judges by ensuring they cease to be members of the Canadian Armed Forces upon appointment.
Compte tenu des arguments avancés.
In light of the arguments made, the chair has carefully reviewed Bill C-11 as adopted by the House at second reading and the amendments in question. The principal or main legislative objectives of the bill appear to be reform the military justice system with a particular view to enhancing the independence of authorities in the system and removing the military justice system's jurisdiction over crimes of a sexual nature. The amendments in question propose changes to the National Defence Act. 2 of the amendments, CPC 1 and CPC 16, were deemed inadmissible by the chair of the committee, since they seek to amend a section of the Act that is not amended by Bill C-11. 4 further amendments, namely BQ2, NDP 4, CPC 10, and BQ3, were deemed admissible by the chair of the committee on the grounds that they exceed the scope of the bill as adopted by the House at second reading.
We'll first address the amendments that were ruled inadmissible due to a violation of the Parent Act principle. House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 4th edition, explains this principle in section 16.75 as follows, quote, in the case of a bill referred to a committee after second reading, an amendment is generally inadmissible if it proposes to amend a statute that is not before the committee, or a section of the parent act, unless the latter is specifically amended by a clause of the bill. In certain cases, such amendments can, however, be admissible if they are shown to be directly relevant to the subject matter of the bill being considered while meeting the criteria of principle and scope, unquote. CPC 1 creates a new time limit during which an officer may act on behalf of the Judge Advocate General with the possibility of extension by approval of the Governor and Council. Similarly, CPC 16 creates a new clause to amend the appointment process for the Chief Military Judge to ensure the position cannot be vacant for more than 120 days. Both amendments seek to amend sections of the Act that the bill does not address. While the bill does mention both positions, the version adopted at second reading did not amend the appointment process for the Judge Advocate General, the process through which others can act on behalf of the Judge Advocate General, or the appointment process for the Chief Military Judge. In the case of CPC 1 and CPC 16, the Chair agrees that the amendments were inadmissible as they are inconsistent with the Parent Act principle.
The Chair will now consider the remaining amendments, which were ruled to be inadmissible for exceeding the scope of the bill. As Speaker Milliken noted in a ruling on January 9, 2008, at pages 2,312 to 2,313 of the debate, and I quote, the principle refers to the purpose or objective of a bill, while the scope refers to its legislative scheme or the mechanisms that will give effect to the principle, purpose, or objective of a bill. Unquote. BQ2 seeks, in Clause 8 of the bill, to add a new Section 70.4 in the Act, which would require the preparation of a plan to create an Office of the Inspector General for Sexual Misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. The Deputy Government House Leader had also suggested in her intervention that this amendment could infringe upon the financial prerogative of the Crown. While the Chair does not find that the preparation of the plan would impose a charge on the public treasury, an Office of an Inspector General for Sexual Misconduct does appear to be a new concept that is beyond the scope of the bill, as adopted by the House at second reading.
4 amends Clause 6 of the bill by adding new sections 71.164 and 5 to the Act, to ensure to the extent possible that every person involved in the investigation or prosecution has training or experience in trauma-informed approaches. Bill C-11 amends Section 71.16 of the Act, but in a very limited matter, only to provide that an individual acting on a person's behalf can request that a victim's liaison officer be appointed. To add a requirement for every person involved in an investigation or prosecution to have this sort of training appears to the Chair to go beyond the scope of the changes proposed in the bill. Furthermore, the bill is silent on training related to trauma-informed approaches, which also appears to the Chair to be a new concept beyond the scope of the bill. CPC 10 adds a new clause to the bill that adds a new section in the Act, which would create a new mechanism for the appointment of a liaison officer to assist the accused. The Act already provides for a liaison officer for the victim, but not for the accused. The bill, therefore, is not introducing this concept, but rather is simply modifying a matter related to the appointment of a victim's liaison officer. The concept of a liaison officer for the accused appears to be an entirely new concept that was not already contemplated by the bill as adopted at second reading and appears to the Chair to exceed its scope.
Finally, BQ3 amends Clause 18 of the bill by further expanding the class of persons who are eligible to be appointed as a military judge and provided that any officers or non-commissioned members appointed to be military judges are to be released from the Canadian Armed Forces. As stated in paragraph E of its summary, The bill already expands the class of persons who are eligible to be appointed as military judges. To amend these provisions to further expand that class of persons appears to the Chair to be consistent with the legislative scheme of the bill. However, the amendment also introduces the new concept of the release from the Canadian Forces of anyone appointed as military judges. And this appears to be beyond the scope of the specific change the bill proposed to make to the Act. In the Chair's view, while these amendments may to varying degrees relate to the principles of B11, they nevertheless go beyond the legislative scheme and concepts provided for in the bill, and were correctly ruled inadmissible by the Chair of the committee as being outside its scope. Consequently, I order the aforementioned amendments, adding new clauses 2.1, 9.1, and 19.1, as well as those amending clauses 8, 9, and 18, be declared null and void and no longer form part of the bill as reported to the House. In addition, I am ordering a reprint of Bill C-11 with the removal of the inadmissible amendments. This reprinted versions will stand as the official version of the bill for consideration at report stage. I'd like to thank members for their attention.
House that because of the deferred recorded division, the time provided for government orders will be extended by 13 minutes. Orders of the day.
Orders of the day, government orders, government bills commons, consideration at report stage of Bill C-10, Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation Act.
Ruling by the Speaker. Okay. An act respecting the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation, loi concernant le comité.
An act respecting the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation.
There's one motion and amendment standing on the notice paper for the report stage of Bill C-10. Motion number 1 will be debated and voted upon. Je vais maintenant soumettre la motion.
I will now submit motion number 1 to the House.
Mr. Ross, seconded by Mr. Jenis, moves that Bill C-10 be amended by deleting the short title. What do we do now? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government. Oh, I'm sorry. The Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I get to my comments, I'd like to draw the attention